Hi designer friends, in this video we're going to cover the whole web design process from start to finish to give you an overview of what all the steps look like and what tools you'll need to go through this process. And later in this module we're going to dive deep and explore in depth each one of the steps in this process. Now, building a website is actually kind of like baking a cake, right? You can't just take flour and put it in the oven. That's not going to work. There's a few steps that you need to go through, and you need to go through them in a very specific order in order to get the outcome that you want to get. And so here are the steps. We start off with a discovery session, and the purpose of the discovery session is to actually discover why are we building a website? What are the problems that we are trying to solve here? So this helps us to define what is the scope, because everything that we do on a website, from how many pages, what content is there, and what features have in the website, they're actually tools to solve some kind of a problem that we're trying to solve, and we need to identify that problem and the features or the scope needed to solve that problem. So that's what we're going to do in the discovery phase. The next step after that is going through a strategy phase, and the goal of the strategy phase is to really align everybody that is involved in what are we trying to accomplish, to make sure that we're all aligned on the goals, all aligned on the visual style and all the features and how everything is going to look like once we go through the design phase. Now, the strategy session also have kind of like two other, let's call them subtasks or sub-steps, which are research and also working on content strategy and information architecture, so that by the end of this strategy session, we have a sitemap, we understand what content and what pages are needed in the website, and we're all aligned with the clients about that. From there, we're moving into the wireframing phase, and the goal of the wireframing phase is to take this rough, kind of like a map of the website, and start to structure the content in place and understand where things are going to be placed on the page. Now, this is kind of like a rough, very rough sketch of the design, and the purpose here is that before we spend so much time working on making everything beautiful, we get approval from the client about the structure and about the core functionality of the website and how things are going to be structured. So this is the next step. After we get approval on that, we go through the visual design, where we actually make everything pretty, right? We choose the right fonts, we choose the right colors, we find great imagery, and we make sure that everything looks great, but also helps us achieve the strategic missions and goals that we have defined for the website. From there, we take this visual design into development and actually turn this into a functional live website. And then the last step is taking this website, this live website, and delivering it, handing it off to the client, making sure that it's live, that everything works, and the client knows how to handle future updates or update content throughout the website. So this is basically the overview of the steps. Now, when you are working with clients on projects, on website project, there'll actually be few more steps before this process, right? They'll first call you, right, to know whether you're a good fit to work together. You'll have the discovery session with them. We talked about this, but based on this discovery session, you'll also have to price the project, right? You'll have to send them a proposal saying, I'm willing to do this project and here are the price for this. And then you're going to have to close the deal. Only after you close the deal, you move into the next step, which is the strategy session. So there are a few extra steps. Now, this course specifically is not a business course. And so we're not going to dive deep into these steps about selling, about pricing, about the proposal. I'm going to cover them briefly to give you the tools that you need to go through this. But if you want to dive more into the business side of things, we have a full-on program on freelancing and the business of design. This course is focused about the process of web design, and we're going to talk mostly about the strategy and the design and the development of the website. So what I want you to understand is that each one of these steps that we covered is a milestone. And what I mean by milestone is it's a time to sync with the people who are involved in the project to make sure that we are aligned and before we move on going forward. Each one of these steps is a step that builds on top of what we agreed upon, right? The strategy is based on a strategy for solving the problems that we identified in the discovery. So we have to be clear. Everybody has to agree that those are the problems that we're trying to solve, and this is the strategy to solve them. Then in the wireframing, we all agree that this is going to be the structure of each page, and this is the content that's necessary. And then in the next step, we agree, before we go ahead and develop and build stuff, we agree that those are the visuals, these are the colors. At each one of these stages, if you want to make, adjustments to the step prior, it's costly because you've already built upon it. So these are good milestones to get approval from the other side. A lot of times these milestones will also be when you're going to get paid. It's not like you're going to get paid only at the end of the project. It's good to break the payment throughout these milestones. But I want you to understand that each one of these steps in the process is a milestone to make sure that everybody agree about where we are before we move on to the next step of the process. All right, let's talk about the tools that you'll need to go through this whole web design process. Well, first of all, you're going to need some kind of a tool to manage the project. Whether you're working alone or you're working with a client or with a team, you'll need to sync. There's a lot of tasks, there's a lot of phases as you've seen in this process, and you want to manage this whole project. Now there's a lot of tools to do this, tools like Notion, Trello, Google Docs, there's a lot of them. We'll put a doc in the resources for this program with our recommendations and templates, but no matter what, and I'll say this again later, you can use, for the process that we'll cover in this program, you'll be able to use whatever tools you work. You can apply this process with any tool. Now, for doing the visual side of things, for the UI design, you can use tools like Figma, you can use tools like Adobe XD or Sketch. Again, all of them work just the same. There are pros and cons between each of them, but they're mostly similar, and we'll put our recommendations in the doc as well. You'll also need a tool for editing images because most websites have images on top of them, and whether you need to crop, change colors, cut the image, you'll need some kind of an image editing software. So you can use something like Photoshop, you can use something like Photoapea or Affinity. There are, of course, paid tools and free tools. You'll be able to pick the one that's a good fit for you. For doing in-depth motion design, you're going to use After Effects. We're not going to dive deeply into After Effects in this program, but it's something that you'll need if you want to dive into really advanced motion, which we will cover how to do good motions in this program, but we're not going to cover the technical stuff of working within After Effects. Now, for development, whether you'll do the development yourself or you'll want to outsource and collaborate with somebody else on it, you'll be able to either work with tools like Webflow, tools like WordPress or Elementor or Squarespace or something like this. And of course, you can collaborate with a full-on developer. But these are the tools that perhaps you'll want to use when building your website. So to sum up this process, right, the tools that I've just mentioned, they're interchangeable. They're changing all the time. And you can, as I said, you can complete this process with whatever tools you want, but the steps in the process, the steps do not change, and the order of the steps do not change. They are mandatory if you want to create highly valuable strategic websites. And so the steps do not change, the tools might change. Remember that, and I'll see you in the next video.